You're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport and streaming online at WPKN.org.
Reporting and supporting what matters. This is CT Examiner Weekly.
As the midterm elections inch closer, Connecticut's state Democratic Party, which has had a lock since 2018 on all three levers of state government, has seen party incumbents facing challenges from the party's left. This is playing out in the state's 13th Senate district. I'm reporter Luke Feeney with that story.
Since the Connecticut Office of Inspector General was established in 2021 by the state's Police Accountability Act, the office has charged 2 officers with manslaughter for the use of deadly force. The most recent case against Hartford police officer Joseph Magnano for the shooting death of Stephen Jones in February has sparked a firestorm of criticism. I'm reporter Charlotte Harvey with that story.
Taxpayers across Connecticut have been rejecting town budgets this year in an effort that some say is motivated by high inflation and economic uncertainty. But how many rounds of cuts and votes will it take before residents of several Connecticut's small towns finally approve their budgets? I'm reporter Ally LeMaster with that story.
From sailing the Connecticut River to extravagant flowers in Newport, I'm Robin Breeding with some fun things coming up from across the state.
And I'm Greg Stroud, CT Examiner's Editor-in-Chief. We'll dig into these stories and focus on why they matter in this edition of CT Examiner Weekly. First up, let's talk to Luke Feeney about the race in the 13th Senate District. Who's running?
So we've got current state rep Jack Fazzino. He's been in Hartford for 2 terms, and he's running against Cheshire Town Council Vice Chair Jim Jinks, who has been serving in local government for the past few years as well.
And so what towns are these covering?
That would be the communities of Meriden, Cheshire, Middletown, and Middlefield.
So right in the center of the state. And so what are the stakes? Why have a primary? Why have a challenger? How do they differ? These are 2 Democrats, right?
Yeah, so the seat opened up because the current seat holder, Democratic State Senator Jane Hockdale, she announced she would be retiring. So that opens up the seat. And then you have Fazzino, who's been in government for about the past 4 years, like I said. He said that he believes he's got the right experience, he's got the right knowledge, the right institutional knowledge, and he said he feels ready to sort of take that next step, begin chairing committees, stuff like that.
So we don't actually have an incumbent, but we have a candidate who's running as kind of the establishment candidate.
Yes.
And as I understand it, that's the younger guy in this race.
Yeah, and that was the thing that kind of interested me about it, because typically what you see is if you have a sort of insurgent candidate, they typically tend to be on the younger side just because younger people have less experience, just definitionally sometimes in these things.
So let me bring Ally in, because Ally LeMaster has been covering these primaries across the state, and there has been some we have a story that's breaking right now that you're going to be working on about another sort of primary, and there's quite a bit of friction here between different flanks of the party.
Yeah, we're really seeing the left and the center of a party kind of, I wouldn't say go after each other, but it's not as
I think some of it is, look, Democrats have dominated states' government since 2018, and I'm sure they don't like Trump, but at some point what's going on nationally just isn't enough as a unifying thing, and I think there are serious disagreements about what the party should look like going forward, and I think we're seeing that play out this summer.
Can you give us some examples of what those frictions are?
I think the biggest friction I've identified, or in my opinion at least, is on taxing the rich. I mean, that's the biggest difference in my opinion between these 2 candidates. I think they do share a lot of things that they agree with. And even Jinks himself, even though he's to the left, he said he would prefer the Connecticut State Democratic Party over any party. But I just think they want more. And it's a matter of, should we keep going for more, or should we keep doing what's been working?
This is one of the issues that I've been pressing you to ask candidates is, so you have a supermajority. We're pretty sure this fall election is going to be a big election for the Democrats. So you get a super duper majority. What does it matter? And so I think, would you say that it's fair that some of these races, that's really the issue. So you're in control. Are you going to use that control or not? And for what?
Yeah, I do think that's definitely a way of putting it. And I think even in this race, I think there are differing points of view on what has been done while they've been in control. I think a lot of people will argue, and they will probably reasonably think so, that the Democrats have done a good job. And I'm sure if you go to people further to their left, they would say the Democrats haven't done enough.
So Allie, is it easy to primary an incumbent? Is it easy to run against the party that's in power in this state?
No. You hear from pretty much anyone who wants to primary, who's trying to primary, that it's an absolute uphill battle. I believe it's 5% of, I probably should be quoted on that, but 5% of signatures you need of the district of Democratic voters or any party voter to get on that ballot.
In a very limited time.
Yes.
So right now we're in a period where all the insurgent candidates are trying their best to get their petitions filled with signatures. And I think the deadline is June 5th, as I recall. And so to get those petitions signed and to have those signatures confirmed as valid. So it's a tight window. And what I know is there are very few people, very few experts in this state on election law. And no surprise, those people tend to be aligned with either Democrats or Republicans.
Yeah, and sort of to your point, Jinx was able to qualify because he got 25% of support from all the delegates at their state convention on May 18th. So the immediate race that sort of popped out to me when I looked at this race is Elliott versus Lamont. But even then, I do think it's interesting, sort of like you said earlier, the flip that the sort of established guy is the younger guy and the progressive is the older guy.
I think what we're seeing, really not just in Connecticut, but nationally, is we're seeing a lot of dissatisfaction with the establishment. And that plays out differently in red and blue states. It's bringing in these new insurgent, new candidates that aren't necessarily really versed in all of the election laws and party particulars. And how that plays out will be interesting.
I was just going to ask for the listeners, could you explain what insurgent means in this particular case?
I would define it sort of as upstarts, sort of running against the status quo. You're running against the party. I would define it as that.
Yeah, it could be for in running against Courtney. We have George Austin is certainly an upstart candidate, even in his own party. And we see it playing out all over. So that's certainly something that we'll be following. Where does this go from here? What should we be looking for in the coming weeks?
Well, the primary is on August 11th. And I guess in the run up to it, we'll be seeing what they are campaigning for and against.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have a very different story, but maybe it deals with, it has its own campaign resonance. And that's this report from the Office of the Inspector General and this arraignment of an officer in Hartford for a shooting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Charlotte?
Sure. On February 27th, 2026, so a couple months ago, there was a police-involved shooting where Hartford police officer Joseph Magnano shot Stephen Jones, who was 53 years old, 9 times. And he died, unfortunately, a few days later. And since then, the Inspector General has been investigating the case.
So, and was there something different about how this case was handled? We've had 2 officers charged since 2021 for shootings. And there's this case, and then there was a previous case. And is there some sense that these cases have been handled differently? And what is it?
So the main criticism that I've heard of this case compared to the previous case, which was State Trooper Brian North, is that this case, the timeline was so accelerated. The investigation happened so quickly. The charges came so quickly.
So by quickly, what's the difference?
The average Inspector General investigation is 440 days, whereas Officer Magnano's case took 73 days for the final report to be issued and for the arrest warrant to be served.
Could that be a good thing?
It could be a good thing. When I talked to Inspector General Elliot Prescott, who's been serving since April 2025, he said that it was a result of his office being around for longer. It's been around for 4 years now, and that there's more institutional knowledge. They've, really adjusted to things, and that the speed is really a result of that.
So I was wondering, did you ask if there was some sort of queue system? Like, how does this happen with what cases do they take on?
The answer is very vague. I asked particularly because less than 2 weeks before, there was another shooting of a man, Everard Walker, in Hartford, and this case was being adjudicated faster than that one. Only the preliminary report's been issued. And I asked him, and he said that there isn't really a queue system. It's not chronological. It's what cases can be worked, what has the most evidence, and what is most pressing at the moment.
Charlotte, you mentioned in your teaser that some were saying that the arraignment has been spurred by political expedience. Who would benefit from that, I guess would be my question.
So there has been a lot of political involvement in this case since the beginning, and probably the figure that might benefit the most would be the mayor of Hartford. He was the one who came out and publicly fired Officer Magnano, which is not something that happens. And there's just been a lot of political and public figures involved in this case since the beginning.
So in this case, we have a man who is shot. I believe there was a call from the family, right? The police were not responding just to any old call, but the family called for help. A man with a mental health incident. The police arrive, and at first they arrive and they kind of cautiously deal with this man. And then another officer arrives, and this is Officer Magnano. And in fairly short order, he comes into conflict with the victim and shoots him. And so it's the officers confronted with a knife, and it quickly devolves in a matter of seconds.
36 seconds.
36 seconds from arriving until the death of this man. And so that's sort of some of the speed, really the speed of the whole case, whether it's the death, the shooting, and how quickly they're handling it. That seems to be the issue. And it's all happening, as we know, and as we've been discussing, within a pretty hot campaign. Allie.
I'll also say, like, when the incident happened, it was all over social media. I think people saw, there's 4 officers, I believe, on the scene. So there's, body camera footage from that. There's, bystanders taking video of it. And it seems that it's interesting that the inspector general said this is for, we don't really have a queue. It's kind of based on this. And it seems like there's a lot of evidence in this case, like a lot of video evidence in this particular one.
But again, it plays out if Connecticut is a blue state and it has a supermajority and the Democrats have been in power for a long time. How does that play out with policing? How does that play out with police accountability? And that was a big bill that was passed in 2021, right? The police accountability bill was the biggest bill that's been passed since CT Examiner launched in 2019. And so what effect has it had?
There's been 49 use of force cases investigated by the office since the office opened in 2021, and there's only been 3 charges that have been laid against officers. This is the second manslaughter charge, but before this, the most recent case was an endangerment and negligence charge in an instance of shooting where no one was injured.
So do you think maybe part of the reason why this has come to the forefront has been kind of like Allie mentioned, we have video, there's so many evidences, and it's sort of similar. I think about the George Floyd case where the initial police report absolutely does not describe what is going on. And then when the video released, it highlighted it. Is it like that?
That is at least what the inspector general is arguing, in the sense that there was so much evidence that it was a case that was very approachable in the sense of investigation and was able to be done quickly.
So Charlotte, where do we go from here? What should we expect?
Well, the June 5th arraignment is the start of the case, and things will just continue as the slow wheels of justice turn.
And we'll see how this one plays out and whether this case moves forward. Thank you very much. So last, I think we should turn to Allie. And we have a different kind of revolt here. And this one is at the local level across the state. We have town budgets. What are people saying about the town budgets? What's happening?
They're saying it's too high. And that's across the state. I've been covering East Lyme for 2 years at this point. And the East Lyme budget was rejected, which when these things happen, usually in my experience, budgets aren't really rejected unless there's anything else. And there seems to be a trend across the state, including in Guilford, which Luke has reported on.
Yeah, Guilford's sort of similar to East Lyme, except they've rejected their budget twice now. The first one failed in April. They proposed an additional hundreds of thousands of dollars of cuts. And then the second one failed, and they're probably looking down the barrel of another $750,000 worth of cuts.
So in New England government, it varies by town, but for a lot of towns, the taxpayers, the residents, have to vote to approve a budget. They can't write the budget, but they can say no. And in this case, we're seeing, or multiple cases, we're seeing the public just say no. It used to be, certainly, I had a sort of rule of thumb that if the budget was over, an increase was over 4%, there was going to be a problem. But now with inflation, we're pretty much seeing every budget over 4%, I think. What are the increases? Do you have a sense, Allie, of what the increases are in some of these towns?
Right. So last year in East Lyme, they approved a 6.3% mill rate increase. And then this year they rejected a 5.28% mill rate increase. So a lot of the budget in East Lyme in particular, they attribute it to inflation, but also they're trying to increase services right now, which is something that residents have, kind of come out against and said, we don't have the budget for this with everything going up. I think people are really scared about inflation and current economic uncertainty at the moment. And
one thing we see in some towns that have, certainly when they have revaluations of their properties, we see that, frankly, the commercial properties, the retail properties that once provided the backbone of the tax base, those properties, those values are decreasing. And that means that somebody else is having to pick up the slack. And that tends to be residential homeowners.
So something I think is interesting, and Allie, I don't know if you've seen similar, but I do think there is a disconnect between the realization that it's not just individuals who deal with inflation, it's governments as well. And at least in Guilford, the biggest driver was health insurance, not, some new project, not a new park, not something like that. So I think watching governments have to grapple with the same economic frustrations that residents have has been interesting.
I also will say school budgets, which make up about 60 to 75% of town budgets, just always go up. And I think what's interesting is you're seeing in a couple of these towns, other towns that have also not passed their budget. The first time around was North Haven and Newtown. And in some of these places, you're also seeing an older population as well, people that are struggling and that are like, we can't, afford another huge increase, even though it might go for something, good, like, better schools or something like that.
Certainly one thing we saw that post-COVID is we saw a huge boost in property values. And that boost tends to get you higher taxes. I mean, on the one hand, you've got it's Crimea River, your house is now worth twice as much. But if you want to stay in that house, then you're going to pay more taxes. And it's frankly, one thing that older people find is it's hard to downsize in Connecticut because there just aren't that many houses, smaller houses for sale. There aren't that many apartments to move into. So it's sort of not, people are kind of stuck.
Allie, I don't know if you observed this, but I did notice sort of a generational difference where not all, but for the most part, I felt like people who were supporting constraining the budget and cutting more were older folks who were worried about downsizing and were worried about their tax bills increasing. And at least in Guilford, a lot of the people who wanted budgetary increases were school parents or, public workers, people who, benefit from increased services like that.
This is, and I think what we're seeing on the state level sometimes is the idea that maybe veterans or maybe people are disabled or maybe older residents, is there a way to give them a rebate? Is there a way to make their taxes a little bit cheaper? And we're seeing this actually in energy policy and other things. And it's, I don't know if we're moving towards more of a two-tier sort of fee and tax structure. We already have progressive taxes, if you will, but we'll see. And I think this is certainly something that we'll be following for a long time as the economy sells out, and we'll see if inflation keeps going, because I think for a lot of people that are under the age of 50, inflation and an inflationary economy is a brave new world. So, Allie, what's next, and where do we go from here?
So the voters in East Lyme are going to hold a second referendum, and we'll see the results of that. We'll definitely keep following it.
And so next up, we always wrap up the show with a look at the arts calendar. I think it's the best arts calendar in the state. And Robin Breeding, our arts editor, is in the studio. What do we have?
Well, it's June, and everybody's hoping that things are going to start warming up soon because a lot of outdoor events are happening. And first up, I have on Tuesday evenings in June, there is Shanties and Sails at the Connecticut River Museum in Essex. And it's great. Every Tuesday night, they're having free hour-long shanty concerts. And then if you want to pay $25, you can go on their classic en roost ship with the performers, and they'll sing for you for another hour.
So it's one of the prettiest historic waterfronts in the state of Connecticut, on the Connecticut River, with the possibility of getting on the water in a sort of a replica 1600s boat, which is, we've seen it putt up and down the river and many times, and people having a great time. So shanties and sailing in Essex, just $25 to get on the boat, and that's Tuesdays through June.
Yeah.
So, and what else do you have for us, Robin?
All right. Coming up is the Newport Flower Show, and it's called Pearls of Newport. That's June 19th through the 21st. And I believe it's $35 for entrance fees. It's at Rosecliff. And Newport and flowers, it's the big event down there for the whole season, and absolutely beautiful flower arrangements and sales and all kinds of things.
So this is a chance to see, the great Gilded Age mansions and to see beautiful gardens there. And that is through June 19th through 21st at Rosecliff. That's 548 Bellevue Avenue in Newport, Rhode Island.
Can you buy the flowers, or are they just for looking?
Oh, these are just beautiful, gorgeous. You'll go into the house and you'll see beautiful arrangements all over the whole house. And
nice.
Yeah, it'll be just to look at.
You can't have, and maybe, I don't know, I'm afraid the cliff walk, which is one of the great things, is at least limited or closed. There has been some disruption there, a little bit of rock fall. But from June 19th through 21st, the Newport Flower Show. What else do you have for us?
Okay, Thursday, June 19th is the opening reception for The Art of Alberta Cifolelli, and it's at the Sorokin Gallery on 96 Greenwich Avenue. And she was an artist who was in Westport for decades painting. Donald Cuspit labeled her the neo-symbolist and described her work as a daring contribution to romantic landscape painting. The reason I put this there is I really think she is a great painter. She won the Charles Birchfield Lifetime Achievement Award. And she also, she paints in this very romantic style that's very much like Odeon Redon. It's great stuff.
So we have, so it's an art opening, June 19th on Greenwich Avenue at the Sorokin Gallery. And that's The Art of Alberta Cifolelli, Sorokin Gallery, 96 Greenwich Avenue, Greenwich, on June 19th. And what else do you have for us, Robin?
Okay. On June 20th, as part of the Branford Festival, there is the Branford Historical Society's Strawberry Shortcake Festival. And I really like this kind of old-fashioned event. If you like strawberry shortcake, how can you not like to go support the Historical Society? So it's at Hammerfield on Meadow Street in Branford. It costs $14, and it's part of a much bigger event, but I love strawberry shortcake.
So the Branford Historical Society Strawberry Shortcake Festival, June 20th, from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in Branford at Hammerfield. And that's a cost of $14 for a shortcake?
Yep.
And so, certainly this is something, maybe we'll do it this year. We've done it in the past. We've gone and tried every strawberry that we could find in Connecticut. That might be, I see Allie over there nodding her head because, this one is, it's something that Connecticut does well.
This year's strawberries are from Ceccarelli Farms in North Branford.
Well, thank you very much. I think we'll be going to that one ourselves. And do you have one more for us?
One more. Opening at Goodspeed Opera House in East Haddam is Crazy for You, the tap dancing Gershwin hit. And so it's a big Ken Ludwig show that was launched in 1992. It's, was a show that was considered to revolutionize the contemporary musical. So, everything changed after that. Goodspeed tap dancing. How can you go wrong?
So that's Crazy for You at the Goodspeed, June 19th at 7:30 p.m. The Goodspeed Opera House in East Haddam.
Runs through August 9th.
So June 19th through August 9th. So that one certainly sounds fun. You can't really get better musical theater in the state of Connecticut, and really maybe in New England, than at the Goodspeed Theater, the Goodspeed Opera House. And it's a pretty drive up.
Absolutely.
So Newport, Branford, Greenwich. Robin, what's your number one event for this week, the one that you're definitely going to make?
I'm definitely going to Greenwich, and I'm going to go look at Alberta Cifolelli because I really like her work a lot. She's no longer alive, but she painted beautiful, romantic, mid-century landscapes in the Westport area. I want to see them in person.
So I know one thing you're always looking for is a great art gallery, whether it's in New York or whether it's in Connecticut or Massachusetts. And they're hard to find, harder than they should be. And so when you see a show, you kind of jump on it. And I think that's the case. This is certainly one of the shows in Connecticut this whole year that you've kind of wanted to jump on. Is that right?
Yeah, there's something about her work that's very compelling, and that's a delight to me.
And considering it's sort of neo-symbolist, it sort of hits me sort of at my heart, because that's actually my research that's my academic research before I got into the journalism world. When I was working on my PhD, that's what I studied.
If any of the listeners are familiar with Odilon Redon, her work has a lot in common with that. Very sort of dreamy flowers and just mystical landscapes.
Beautiful color.
All right, Greg, that's where I'm going. How about you?
Well, I hope, Robin, you will come with me to Newport and see the flowers, maybe go into one of the big mansions up on the cliff, go out to eat before the crowds get too heavy this summer in Newport. I never really like to go in the summer, but just in the shoulder season, we've got just enough time to see the flowers, and that's where I'll be heading.
Sounds great.
Before we go, some quick notes from the editor. The biggest story this week was high-speed rail. And I can't emphasize how big of a story it was. I mean, it was 2 or 3 times as many readers of any other story. And it's because a lot of historic towns have a lot invested in this. Last time around, a decade ago, this plan could have devastated these towns. And so now there's a new plan. A lot of people want to jump on board high-speed rail, but they want a plan that they can get aboard with. And we'll see. And that's this summer. There will be open houses. I just got an email, in fact, that's announced some of these open houses for residents and for town officials, and to learn more about high-speed rail between New Haven and Providence. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us today in the studio: Luke, Robin, Allie, and Charlotte. Next week, we'll have more coverage and all the news, and with a look at how these stories play out from Hartford to your town. I'm Greg Stroud. The news is never done.
For more news and events, or if you want to send in comments or story ideas, please go to ctexaminer.com. And if you want to support our mission of keeping Connecticut informed of the news that matters, a subscription is just $20 for the entire year. Reporting and supporting what matters. This has been CT Examiner Weekly. Thanks for listening.